just how do you access the fast boot service inside an initializer?
I will demonstrate that. Yeah, the easiest way is for me to show you in my solution. And here we go. So the way I'm going to opt to do this is getting that request information from the fast boot service. I'm going to set that up in an instance initializer where I retrieve the data. I'm going to leave that data in the container for the Ember app to access it, from there on out. And if we are rendering on the client, right, if we're running in the browser, I'm essentially going to put that data in the container after deserializing it from the shoebox. So a lot of the work we're going to be doing here is going to be in an instance initializer. We're going to kind of leave it there in the same place, regardless of whether we're rendering stuff on the server or on the client. And the reasoning is we want to keep these two code paths from forking too much. We don't want the conditional switching between, are we in server rendering or are we in client rendering? We don't want that forking to bleed out, beyond one module if we can get away with it. So here we go. Ember generate instance initializer. And I'm just going to call it request info. Okay, so we've got our files created. So there's request info. I don't really care where this is run, but what we're going to want to do is get a hold of the fast boot service. And one of the questions we got online was, how do we get access to the fast boot service inside an initializer? Well, it's pretty simple. You just grab it from the container. Remember that instances are created on demand when we use app.lookup. And so we're just going to use app.lookup and grab the service that way. So we'll do it this way. Equals, let's just call this app for short. App lookup service fast boot. And we'll just set a debugger there and see how things turn out. And I'm going to, for now, oops, apparently the app's already running. Just on a different port. All right, we'll kill it. So I'm just going to work in development in non-fast boot mode, and then we'll switch over to fast boot mode to make sure that it works. Oops, something was not happy here. The stupid directory thing. So dist node modules blown away. Now we should start fine. Great, looks good. And just what I want to see is that this service is what we expect it to be. I'm actually going to get rid of this as well. This is our geolocation thing because it's taking a few seconds every time we restart the app. Let me restart here. All right, here we go. So looks like my my source mapping is not working properly here, but I assure you we're actually at this debugger on line 6. So here we can see that this fast boot service, this is actually the same thing as if we'd injected the service. So if we do get shoebox, we can see that we're able to retrieve this shoebox, right? And in terms of what's available on the shoebox, we can see that we've got put and retrieve, and these are shoebox specific methods. All right. So I have every reason to believe that this will work the way we want it to. So the first thing we want to do, and I'm just going to copy some code from my slide here so I'm on the same page as everyone else. We're just going to want to lazily create the store if it doesn't exist, because we don't have a guarantee that it exists, and then put the item in the store. So I'm just going to copy this out, and I'll uncomment it line by line as we go through it. So I'm not just dumping a ton of code on you. All right. So the first thing is we're retrieving the shoebox, and we're going to get it from FB service instead of this, right? So this.get fastboot.shoebox. This is what we would do if we had injected the fastboot service onto some container-aware object like a route or a component or something. All we have to do is make a small adjustment like this, and we're just using the service to get the shoebox directly without this being all that important, right? So then we're going to get the shoebox store, and we're going to just call this request data. We're going to need that somewhere else too. So now we've got a store, and it may be null, like it may be undefined, right? Because the store may not be there at all in the first place. And this is important to consider because there may be other initializers or other things down the road that might want to put other values into this same store. So it's always smart to kind of like lazily create an empty store, whenever you encounter one that is not there. So in the event that we're in fastboot, what we want to do is we want to get the request data, and we want to make it available in the container under some key. So I'm going to go back to my slide, and I'm going to copy this request headers code here, because user agent is just another header. So we're going to put that in here. So this is going to give us the headers object, and we're going to get that off of the fastboot service, like that. And then we'll just call this UA for user agent, and the header for user agent is user-agent. And just for fun, I'm going to log it out, just so we know that we're OK up till here. Just for fun, I want to see that this works. So I'm going to go to my terminal, stop this, blow away that directory in case it happens to care about it, and we'll run. I don't really care about the static assets. I just want to see that the HTML is what it should be. So we're going to see it listens on port 3000, but remember, it's not actually trying to run the app yet. It only does that when we make a request. OK, so this .get is not a function. Huh.
Headers equal fastboot.get, right?
What's that?
The copied and pasted code had this.get fastboot request headers, right? Nope.
Yeah, you gotta get that from the service.
OK, so we're going to use our Node.js debugging technique. Wait, I think it's this, right? This is it. There is no fastboot to get on this. It's going to be like that. All right. Oh, and it's FB service. Good catch. Thank you. Way to keep me honest. All right. We're available on port 3000. We're going to render. OK, so we can see this is what it looks like when you're not serving assets. This is just the raw HTML. And surprise, here's our user agent. Right? So this is not available on the client in the fastboot service, just on the server. So we're then going to use our old trick of just adding it into the container and passing it instantiate false. So app register. Data location, or no, sorry, data request. I think I was supposed to say request something. Yeah, data request. And the value is going to be user agent, and just do that. And that's pretty much it. So that's going to take care of our value being available when server-side rendering, when we're rendering on the server. We still need to do the shoebox thing. So we don't need this code here, but if we're rendering on the fastboot server, we want to actually fetch some data. So I'm actually going to put that up here. And now we're going to lazily create our shoebox store if it doesn't exist. So this will be like the first thing that we've put into our request data shoebox store. And I'm going to make sure that when I put this empty shoebox store in, when I'm creating an empty one on the fly, I'm giving it the same name. And then the last step here is going to be to kind of write it to the store. And we're going to write it just with user agent equals UA. So what I expect to see now, if I go back to the terminal here, is I'm just going to look at I'm going to do view source, and I want to see that I've got some stuff in my HTML that represents this data that was just rendered. So apparently this is very strange. There it is. Okay. So here's my shoebox request data here. See, it's a script tag, and inside I've got this user agent thing. Right. So it's just a JavaScript object with one value in it. So the next step is going to be that if I am not in fastboot, and that's down here, so not in fastboot, I want to, so the shoebox store may or may not be there. If the shoebox store is not there, I have no way of getting request data in this case. Like that means we're in a static hosting environment, and there's just no way to get a user agent. It would be like if we're hosted on GitHub pages. There's nothing really running in the background. So I'm going to go shoebox store, user agent, and I'm just going to put it in the container. So else if so this is this is rendering on the client having been served with fastboot. And then this is going to be else do nothing, no user agent possible with static hosting. So here I'm going to basically do the same, registration. So essentially, like, regardless of whether our fastboot built thing is being rendered on the server or whether we've picked up and we're starting to take over on the client, regardless, we'll find something in the container under this key, and it will have our value there. And so now I'm going to go to application.js, the route, and I'm just going to add it to our controller here the same way that we added this location data. So I'm just going to copy this and call it request object, and we're going to look up data request, and I'll make that available too. Okay, so now I'm going to kill it. I'm going to restart it. One day we will get this live reload stuff working with fastboot seamlessly. And we will look at our app. Actually, this won't really tell us what we want to know, will it? I want to serve assets. Oh, I forgot something. I forgot to say instantiate false. So it's saying failed to create an instance. And the last thing is I'm just going to go to application.hbs here, and let's, below the nav, add the user agent. So now I'm serving with assets, so we have a client-side version of the app that will pick up once it lands. And let's take a look. Looks like I have some residual thing left over. Data request. Maybe I got my container key mixed up here. So I want to make sure I registered properly. So there's data request. It's up here. So both times I create this thing in the container, I have to instantiate false. And now it's just restart, and it should work. All right, finally. So we've got our server-side stuff that has landed, and let's kind of take a look at our HTML here. UA is not defined. Interesting. Looks like I have one more bug to fix here. So, and this is it. I didn't really retrieve the data from the shoebox. I just kind of like had a random dangling statement there. So it is a little nitty-gritty, but it's nice to know that this is here, because anytime you're living like outside of Ember data, you're going to have to do this kind of thing explicitly. And just like you need to know how to build an AJAX request on your own, this is the way we hand off data between server and client these days. Looks like I have some caching thing left over. UA is not defined. Oh, I'm just writing weird JavaScript now. So these are not Ember specific issues we're running into. They're just little glitches. All right, no more UA is undefined error. And if we look, we should be able to see it like below the nav somewhere. Another way we could take a look is looking at the model for the application or the controller, rather. So we've got $e.get request object. Interesting. So we'll get the owner, and then there's our request. I may have done something ugly here. Get owner, this, look up, data request. I know what I did. Just the wrong property key. So I put it on the controller as REQ, not REQ obj. All right, it's hard to see. I found it though. It's like that little ugly thing here. Okay, so we put it in a really silly place in our DOM, but there it is. This is a piece of data that's only available on the server side. We've written it into the HTML that the server renders, and the client it attempts to rehydrate it. Basically, it attempts to like resume server-side state that was left there and kind of pick up from there on the client side by way of the shoebox. So just to summarize the approach here, in the instance initializer, we used the shoebox, we created a store, lazily created one if it didn't exist, otherwise we used the existing one. We grabbed a header off of this request object that Fastboot has access to, and then we took data there, left it in the HTML for the client to find, and then picked it back up in the client. All of the switching between Fastboot, running in Fastboot versus running in the browser, that is all contained within one JavaScript module. It's in the instance initializer. So none of it's bleeding out into our app. As far as the rest of our app's concerned, we can look into the container under a particular key and it will be there regardless. And if I were to start this up, and I'm going to move on rather than demonstrate this, but if you were to start this up in like development mode, not serving with Fastboot, what you're going to essentially get is just that request object will be undefined, and so it'll just be blank in the HTML. But you could handle that a different way if you really wanted to. All right, so I will move on, and before we start the next exercise, I will commit and push this code.
How do you debug that?
Debug.
You're inside this Fastboot. If you're in Fastboot and you're getting the headers and all kinds of, how do you?
Good question. Let me do it for you. So here's how you do it. You could do it one of two ways. You can set up Visual Studio Code to essentially launch your app and launch it in debug mode and essentially connect to what it just launched. The app that you're working with now, it is set up to do that because I made the configuration work that way. I'm going to show you the other way that will work if you don't have a configuration set up. What you want to do is instead of running node, you want to run node debug and then the script to execute. So here's what that looks like. Node debug, node modules, bin, ember. So now we're like, this is the word ember, and we can run any ember CLI command now, right? So we're going to run ember serve. And I'm actually going to delete that dist folder because I know it's going to just nail me in a sec. Come on. Dist, node modules, great. And now that. Okay, so what you can see here is that we've got a debugger listening on localhost on port 5858. And the way this works is you basically start at a breakpoint. So the app hasn't started running yet. It's allowing me to have the chance to connect to it. So I'm going to do so. And the way you do it is you go to this debug tab and you're going to say attach to process. And hopefully this will work. It may be that, okay, so here's the reasoning. I am set up to attach to a process on a different port. I think it was 5858, yep. All right, let's try it one other way here.
You can also use dev tools for this now. Like I think if you use that IP address and port and just post it into a browser window, the dev tools for that browser window will be the node process.
Interesting.
They just released that capability a little while ago though. I was looking at a talk like a couple months ago.
It's all using the same protocol. So It's pretty neat. So I just had Visual Studio launch it, and what was in all likelihood happening here is it was my debug. I was trying to attach to it as if it were like a pre-Node 6.3 process, and so there was sort of the two ways of talking to each other, and they were not connecting. But now we are debugging, and what we can do is we can go to let's go here, for example, where you would have trouble like this. This is definitely in node land all the time because it's your build pipeline. And if we start that up, you can see like we have access to the app. We can really probe deeply in here, and you get all the benefits of like the code completion and some stuff that it's really, really nice for giving you visibility into it. So this is the main reason that I prefer VS Code over Chrome DevTools, because I don't think that you can have as rich a debugging experience in like the bottom half of your browser compared to something like this. So, but that's the answer there. You would set up breakpoints, and you would want to debug it using Ember CLI fastboot and the Ember fastboot command. It's a little more complicated when you have like the production asset serving layer, because you have multiple processes spun up. And so setting a breakpoint, it's a little bit more complicated than simply like a single thread and you can just freeze everything. You've got some parallelism going there. They're not talking to each other, but it has spawned some other processes. So that's how you would do it. That's one of the reasons that when you're dealing with server-side rendering, you need to have some server-side debugging skill as well.